The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Hey, John, how we doing?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to All You Can Eat. This is your host, Rob Rosenthal. Glad to be with you on this Wednesday evening, coming to you live from New York City, New York. 40 degrees and lovely here in New York. What's today? I'm guessing it's like let's see what the date is. What are we looking at? Like the 19th or so? Can't even tell. Yeah. 19th of December, 40 degrees, New York City, New York. Welcome to the show. It's the podcast about deliciousness. I realize that not only do I like to, to eat the good food, the truth of the matter is I'm happy to talk about it with you. And, I guess this is kind of prime time, really, if you think about it. This time of the year between, your Christmas and your New Year's, coming up on your Valentine's, got a Super Bowl in there. I mean, this is like, I'm telling you, man, this is like prime time eating. Happy, good. Tonight on the show, in addition to, just some delicious ideas that have inspired me. We're also going to spend some time talking with John Kanell. John is the founder of the Preppy Kitchen, and he's got hundreds of thousands of people that tune into him, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube. And so we're going to spend some time chatting with John on the phone about food, which is going to be fun. And let's see, before that, I guess what I would say to you is go ahead, have a seat, mix yourself a cocktail, maybe have something to nosh on, anything from nuts and popcorn to, maybe even dinner. And let's get into the subject of food. I like to start oftentimes on the Wednesdays with what's happening in the New York Times, because I see that, I get that, and I'm here in New York, and I see something today called the Best of 2018, which is kind of the Times compilation of the top, restaurant destinations, drinks, home-cooked dishes, and all the stuff. And one of the first things that they report on is the most read food stories of the year. I thought that was interesting. Let's take a look at what people, at least people who subscribe to the New York Times, what people have, voted with their, with their clicks. I'm going to tell you the 17 most read food stories of the year. Number 17, Indian cooks embrace the Instant Pot. Now, I can't spend a lot of time on the Instant Pot because I don't own one, but I think I understand the value of it. But here's an article basically written by Melissa Clark. She talks about one of her favorite kitchen appliances. This is the Instant Pot. So, again, because it's Christmas season, you may want to check out the Instant Pot. I'm no expert on this thing. In fact, I don't own one, so I can't really comment on it. I will say to you, though, that if you have one, or if you're interested in one, or interested even in buying one, and you want to know how to take advantage of it, you can probably go to Amazon and look up Ivy Manning. Ivy has written, I'm going to say, 8 cookbooks, one of which, her most recent of which, was her cookbook on Instant Pot. Ivy has been a guest on here on the podcast on All You Can Eat. She's a friend and obviously a prolific author in the genre, so I trust her work. But anyway, article number 17 in terms of the most viewed articles in the New York Times this year. Indian cooks embrace the hot spot, the hot pot. Number 16, butter tarts, which are Canada's humble favorite, have much to love. Again, I can't spend too much time on the butter tarts per se, in that I have not had Canadian butter tarts. However, I have a friend, my friend Marston, who knows a little something about food and actually has a place up in Canada that he spends summers at. I know that he has deep love for a butter tart, so it sounds good to me. And as far as the Canadians go, yeah, I mean, I've had your poutine. Nothing wrong with that. I've had that smoked meat and the bagels over in Montreal. So butter tarts, yeah, that's something to love. Number 15 on the list, Ranch Nation, is an article that I do recall reading, not a long time ago. You don't have to travel to Hidden Valley for America's favorite salad dressing. So it turns out that it's not vinaigrette, that it's not Russian, that America's favorite salad dressing is ranch dressing. Now, I don't know. I can't say that I'm surprised or not surprised. I'm not a big ranch user, but apparently. Here's what it says. Invented in the 50s, ranch dressing has inspired fandom beyond food. Sightings include bottles of ranch-flavored soda, ranch fountains at parties, ranch tattoos and memes, even ranch and pizza earring sets. And then there are the ranch superfans who pour it on uni, instant ramen, ice cream, and more. So there you go. Someone actually commented on the article here in the Times, I never thought I'd read a 2,000-word story on ranch dressing to the end, but this was fascinating. Chicken wings with a ranch powder dry rub is one of the most popular items at our local pub, served with ranch dressing, of course. So there you go. Interested in that kind of thing, you just go over to the New York Times. I don't know if you have to subscribe to just get one thing over there. But if ranch dressing is your thing, you go over to the New York Times and put in the search box ranch. What is the article called? It's called Ranch Nation. Well, there you go. 14th most popular subject this year on your New York Times. Why work when you can procrastinate? You're not the only one who whips up a tray of brownies when a deadline approaches. So they've given a name to it, ladies and gentlemen. It's procrastinating, the practice of baking something completely unnecessary with the intention of avoiding real work. It's a surprisingly common habit that has only recently acquired a name. Almost anyone who works at home and has a cookie sheet in the cupboard can try it. Medical students, romance writers, and freelance web designers alike. So there you go, my friends. People, and it's not the, by the way, my friend Cynthia, also from Canada, Montreal product, sent me an article how people are basically, baking. Baking for a lot of people is a form of therapy. Why? Because it requires a certain amount of time, a certain amount of focus, minimal distractions. I'm not a baker. I am a savory guy. Give me fire. Give me something to saute or to roast or to braise. I'm happy, but, I get it. People like to bake. Nothing wrong with that. Subject number 13, the ice cream sundae must be stopped, according to Pete Wells. Easily the most influential food critic in America, does not want a cherry at the top, at the end of his meal. Dessert was put on this planet in order to surprise us, our restaurant critic wrote. When did it become so numbingly predictable? It's as if every chef in town had decided that the only appetizer left standing would be the iceberg wedge. Pete apparently is not thrilled about an ice cream sundae. On the other hand, you have, to paraphrase the great Samuel Johnson, when a man is tired of ice cream, he is tired of life. And by the way, I certainly concur. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm not a huge dessert guy. I'm much more interested in all the stuff that happens before the dessert. But when I have dessert, I like to keep it simple. And one of my two most simple desserts in the world is give me some good ice cream. And there's a lot of good ice cream out there. There really is. Article number 12, The Rise and Fall of Turkey Brining, is an article about how the wet brine bird has fallen out of favor. And I'll be honest with you, a turkey is huge. I know because I have one in my refrigerator. I was over at the Costco sometime today. I picked myself up a turkey just because I was in the mood and they were selling them, I guess because it's this season. And I got no interest, I should say, in finding a pot that's huge enough to load up with the turkey and the water and the salt and the sugar and whatever it takes. If you get a good quality bird, you don't have to brine it. And there's also a recipe included for pulled turkey, which sounds good to me, but I can't say I've ever had it. I'm happy roasting a turkey, man. It's so easy. It's easy. Dry it and hit it up with salt and, I don't know, some butter or oil and some herbs in the cavity under the skin. Throw an onion in there, stick an apple on there, whatever. And then the hardest part of the roasting the turkey is the readiness factor, because we talked about this before, but the breast is going to be ready before the dark meat, so you got to let it cook longer, and dark meat cooks longer until it's ready. Sometimes the breast. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I love a roast turkey. Article number 11, New York Times, top articles of the year. The secret to perfect popcorn is already in your cupboard. A simple trick leads to crunchier kernels. More oil and dry seasonings guide Melissa Clark to a better bowl of popcorn. So they talk about a spicy pimentone popcorn here. And this is interesting to me because I'm a fan of pimentone. For those of you who don't know or don't remember, pimentone is smoked, another way of saying smoked paprika, which is good on a lot of stuff, not the least of which is apparently when you're making your own popcorn. Number 10, the single best thing to cook with chicken breasts. This is kind of surprising. Chicken and lemon are a classic combination that almost every meat eater likes, and chicken franchise is one of the rare restaurant dishes that's easy to make at home. So what I'm going to tell you here is that the top 10 article of the year in the New York Times food section has to do with chicken franchise, which, if you have flour and you have some butter and you have some lemon and you have some white wine, you can make yourself chicken franchise. And I think the reason that it's so fabulous is that it's comfort food, but it's comfort food with elegance, isn't it? Right? Because when you pound out a chicken, it can't be too fat, so it's got to be relatively thin, and you season it, you hit it up with some flour, and you kind of, you brown that and you saute pan, you hit it up with lemon and butter and white wine or whatever else it takes to do this at home. It's just like one of those things everybody likes. There are certain dishes that everybody likes. Chicken franchise, apparently, according to the New York Times, on the very top of the list. It was the number one recalled recipe of the year. Number 9, what's cooking in that egg spoon? A bite-sized culture war. This is about a tool called the egg spoon. And the only reason it became an article of interest is because Alice Waters' name was involved. Long story short, Alice Waters out in California there, Northern California, she knows food. Let us skip to Annoyed by Restaurant Playlist. A master musician made his own. Ryuichi Sakamoto assembled the soundtrack for a restaurant called Kajitsu. And anyway, it's a whole story about how soundtracks in restaurants can be intrusive or even abusive, and a master musician made a list, and the restaurant was smart enough to pick it up. Article number 7 had to do, by the way, of the next, 7 articles, 4 of them are going to be about people that are dead. Article number 7, meaning like the 7th most popular article of the year in the New York Times, was about the death of Jonathan Gold. He was the food critic for the Los Angeles Times. I think the first food critic ever to win a Pulitzer Prize for criticism while he was working at the LA Weekly. And he was great. And he was writing about the LA restaurant scene for many years. Great writer. And, you could make a case, and this is coming from a tried and true, New Yorker, that Los Angeles has maybe the most vital restaurant scene in the country. Oh, or at least one of the 2 or 3. A lot of great food going on out there right now. Anyway, his article about his death was a big deal. So was the article about April Bloomfield here in New York, who broke her silence about the harassment at her restaurant because she was in business with a guy named Ken Friedman, and who he was friendly with Mario Batali, and both guys, he and Friedman and Batali were accused of sexual harassment. And anyway, the article obviously was popular for a variety of reasons, none of them really positive or favorable, which leads right into the number 5 article this year. Disgraced by scandal, Mario Batali is eyeing his second act. Trust me, they wrote this thing a long time ago because he's got no second act. Mario Batali is still somewhere in hiding from what he did. Now we're at the top 4 articles of the year. Number 4, Anthony Bourdain toxicology report, no narcotics in his system. For those who listen regularly or religiously, I devoted an entire show to Bourdain. I still to this day miss him. I think the surprise for a lot of people is how resonant, how impactful that death was to so many of us to this day. I mean, there are people who find it hard to watch him on television now, knowing that he's gone. I don't think he had any idea of the impact that he had. If he did, it didn't matter. Article number 4, Anthony Bourdain, toxicology, no narcotics in his system. And frankly, the other surprise there is that when my wife said to me, Anthony Bourdain, suicide, I thought it was April Fool's. But my first instinct was, when it turned out to be true, oh, he must have gone back to using. He didn't. This is an article about how there were no narcotics in his system. Article number 3, Anthony Bourdain again, a teller of often unappetizing truths. So here's where Pete Wells, the restaurant critic, examined the legacy of Bourdain. Number 2, the one item that will change your weeknight cooking. So this is interesting. Here's a practical piece by Melissa Clark, who's one of the top writers. You can see her over on New York Times on video as well. She went all in on the quarter sheet pan dinner. The long story short is that a sheet pan is what, it's a pan. I mean, it's a pan that you drop in the oven. And she talked about the sheet pan dinner, where basically the concept is, well, here's what it is. The sheet pan lets the home cook multitask, right? You may be able to fit 4 in your oven at once, which makes them highly flexible when you want to cook several things at the same time. So Melissa, who writes, recipes and shows you how to make them, wrote about roasted paprika chicken with potatoes and turnips, right? Sausage parmesan with garlicky broccoli, cumin roasted pork chops, and Brussels sprouts. The point of the sheet pan dinner, and this is what it comes down to, is that you can put everything on one tray, put it in the oven, and when you pull it out, it not only is it all ready together, but it's a complete meal. And so for those of us who cook at home, there are 2 things that are exciting. The one I would call kind of the one pot meal, right? Where you're throwing everything into one single pot. So what's cool about that is it all goes in one place and there's only one thing to clean. Well, it's the same thing here with the sheet pan dinner, whether it's, chicken or pork chops or whatever, and whether it's vegetables or potatoes or root vegetables, whatever it is that you put on there and how you flavor it, it all kind of cooks together and it makes one complete dinner. Finally, article number 1, my friends, is back to, it's an article called The Death of Anthony Bourdain, the television host, it says here, killed himself in June. So there you go, my friends. 17 articles, the top most read stories of the year 2017. Now, let me introduce you to Mr. John Kanell, who is the founder of the popular digital brand. It's called Preppy Kitchen. And, it's interesting. John has amassed, like a lot of people following him. Like he's got 600,000 people following him on Instagram and another maybe 300,000 people over on the website and YouTube. He's got a lot of people. He's a Los Angeles native, self-taught cook, and he majored in fine arts. Grew up in Los Angeles. Majors in fine arts at UCLA, and he graduates, and he's teaching middle school math, and he's perfect and science, right? And he's perfectly happy doing that for like a decade, until he decides to pursue his passion, and his passion is, cooking. So he creates Preppy Kitchen, and it's a cool thing. It's a food and family focused, digital brand, meaning that it's a website and pictures and all that. And he gives people recipes and video content and tips and whatever. And well, there you go. Let's see. At the risk of all the problems that I typically have when it comes to anything having to do with technical issues, we have one every show. But I'm going to push a couple of buttons here and turn you on to my conversation with John Kanell of Preppy Kitchen. Doing good. Where have we found you? What part of the world are you in right now?
For the moment, I'm in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, California. Now, am I right? How is it out there, by the way? What's the current weather conditions, as they like to say?
It's a little brisk, so it's in the high 60s, I think.
Yeah, that's funny how you people find that brisk, but that's fine. Now, and am I right, John, that you are a native? You grew up out there, didn't you?
Yep, I grew up in Los Angeles, and I've almost never left. I lived in New York for just a bit, though.
I'm the kind of the polar, or at least the East Coast opposite. I literally grew up here and never really left, other than traveling extensively. So we have that in common, among other things.
Yeah, well, you have everything at your fingertips, so it's, you can be here or there in just a few hours.
Yeah, I'm still happy here. What's it like though? What's it like growing up out there? I mean, we always heard about like California girls. What's it like to grow up as a boy kid in California?
Well, I think the main difference is you don't really understand outerwear very well. Other than that, I think it's pretty similar.
I gotcha. John, let me ask you, what about food? I mean, what's your kind of food story growing up? What did you eat? What kind of influenced you? And I'm asking you that in preparation for kind of the life change that you made later into kind of the food business. So what was your food story growing up?
Well, really, I grew up in the kitchen with my mom. She's one of those amazing people who are sprinkled throughout the world that can just toss a little bit of flour here, a little sugar, no measurements, and just intuitively understand how to make a great recipe.
Right.
And, I was lucky enough to have like 3-course meal every night and just have everything at my fingertips. So I was my mom's little sous chef, and I really experienced food as a way of like bringing family and friends together and creating focal points for holidays.
Makes sense. What was some of the kind of more memorable, what were some of the favorites that you guys ate and cooked?
Well, we made my all-time favorite is a bûche de Noël, like a nice Christmas Yule log, and that's a much requested birthday and holiday treat. But I think just like what I really picked up was like the joy of making things and like trying new, like, I feel like having some yogurt. Let's make yogurt. Let's find out how that's done.
Well,
or love to have some donuts tonight. Let's fry some up and, try recipes out. I have my other favorite recipe, though, since you asked, is these little filet of sole roll-ups with a cheesy spinach filling, and it's like amazing kind of light, creamy sauce that goes over them. They're like just insane.
Now, now the name of your brand, you call it the Preppy Kitchen, do you not?
Preppy Kitchen.
Are there certain dishes that are associated with the Preppy Kitchen, other than like the ones that you're mentioning? I love the sole wrap up, the bûche de Noël. Are there other things that are associated with kind of Preppy food?
I mean, if like for popular recipes, I think like English tea sandwiches.
Right.
I have a few like cakes. Like there's a funfetti cake and a cookies and cream cake that are kind of like year-round favorites. And I have a vanilla cupcake that is so moist you won't believe it.
Yeah, I do believe it, and we're going to get into that. Now, you went to UCLA, if I have it right, as an art student, no?
That's correct, yeah.
And after that, John, tell the folks that you ended up spending some time as a teacher.
Yep, I was in my altruistic early 20s, and I wanted to, do something that was making a positive impact in the world. And also my mother was a teacher as well, so kind of followed in her footsteps. And I taught math and science in middle school for over a decade in public and private school. So I had like the full experience. I love teaching. Middle school, by the way, is like the best age to teach in my humble opinion.
How come?
Kids are just like little sponges, and they're developmentally just exploding. So they have so much curiosity, but there's not quite that cynicism that creeps in high school.
Right.
So I feel like it's like a little golden moment that you get to touch.
Okay, so now the obvious question: you are an art student. You spend a whole lot of time as a teacher in middle school, and at some point you decided to make the full-fledged transition. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Talk about that. What was that all about? How did that come to be?
Well, throughout this time, I would bake and try things, and it was very popular in the teacher's lounge because
Yeah, I bet.
I would take all my treats over. But after I met my husband, I wanted to be able to have a more flexible schedule, so I could, if he had to be in New York, for example, I could be there with him. And also, I knew we wanted to start a family, so thinking ahead, I wanted to have a career where I could be at home more with the kids I'd hoped to have at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to follow my passion and kind of like get into food blogging, so I could share my recipes with, everybody else.
And you're now, okay, that's cool. So now explain how that has kind of manifested itself since then. You talk about food blogging. So you have a fairly expansive network of outlets, if you will, and people get to see what you write about, and they get to see videos, and they get to see photos. How have you kind of developed how long have you been doing it, by the way, the Preppy Kitchen?
I think it's in year 4 right now.
Oh, that's not bad. So how have you kind of built this this franchise, this business?
Well, the aha moment at the beginning was courtesy of my husband, because I was making these recipes that were delicious, I tell you.
Right.
But I was doing them in a very like homemade way. Like I grew up with, just decorating a cake with that spatula, or plating things like before I would eat them, for example.
Right.
My husband gently told me, that people can't taste your food, they only can see with their eyes. So that was the impetus to take my art training and apply my aesthetic to food. So it was a fun challenge to teach myself to, one, photograph food, because photographing food, if you know, is like totally different than anything else. It's hard to make things look appetizing. And then also to up my creativity and how I was plating and decorating and conceptualizing dishes.
Well, okay, so before we even move on from there, people can, if they want, whether they do it now or later on, they can find you on, is it preppykitchen.com? I mean, I know that you're going to have a Facebook page. There's a preppykitchen.com. There's going to be an Instagram. There's going to be a YouTube. I'm right about all of those, yes?
Yep, that's correct.
And what is the secret? What's the secret, John? Speaking about the photographing of the food, what are some of your what are some of the secrets to the art of taking Instagram-worthy photos?
I think number one is the light.
Yeah.
So for anyone looking to begin, I would just say find a window with really great light, get your food up close, and you want to have really a single source light that is either scraping the side, so it's coming in from the side, or even a little bit backlit. You don't want to have a uniform lighting of your food, and don't turn on your tungsten or, LED or any other lights, because it really needs to be like a natural light temperature.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
And then also I would just say to be mindful of, how you're presenting the food and the general composition. So it's not just about the plate, it's like what's around it, how are you manipulating space, like the rule of thirds, like break your composition up into thirds and see what's happening at those dynamic intersections. That's my tip number 2.
That's cool. I'll take what you got. And you also you shoot plenty of video too, don't you?
Yes, that is like that was a main driver of growth for me, because I was producing video fairly early, and video is so shareable and like immersive. So a picture's worth 1,000 words, and the video is worth 1,000 times more. It's really something people can just kind of like hypnotically fixate on, and then they want to share with their friends. And then if your content's good, you'll have really a large following.
How did people come to find you? What would you say the kind of approach was to getting followers?
Originally, it was on Facebook, and it was from getting shares. So people would share it, and then larger channels would pick up the content and share it to their much larger audiences. And then if people liked it enough, they would click back and follow you.
Got it. Is there a particular style to your cooking, or a particular type of cuisine that you are known for or associated with?
Oh, I like to think that it's like elevated but very approachable. I think that food should be fun, and I love when you have enough time and you can share how special it is that you're cooking for somebody, or bringing family and friends together through your food. So you put a little bit of extra attention, and you make some like buttercream flowers for that cake, or you have like a vegetable tart that's presented in like a very beautiful way, and it's just it's like a lovely gift that you're giving. So I love that aspect of it, but I also want people to do it at home, because that's why I share my recipes. So it's never going to be something so crazy where it's like, melt the sugar and then have it like draped over this contraption, and like it's not. I don't make those crazy like French beautiful pastries that kind of look inapproachable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Well, speaking of family, so now you have kids there?
I have twin 19-month-old boys.
Wow. Okay, we're talking about some young kids. Have you kind of figured out how do you approach their kind of eating and their palate at this stage?
Well, I like them to eat natural foods, and I want to introduce lots of different flavors to them. And really, it's all stuff that I'm making. So we eat, food that I make, and they eat food that I make. I don't want to feed them a lot of packaged foods, and I do want to expose them to as many different flavors as possible. And
so, like, what are they? Like, what's a typical, lunch or dinner? That at night? There's 19 months. I mean, that's still really super early in the overall scheme of things. What kind of stuff you got them eating?
I've got them eating like either some ground turkey for a protein, or some chicken, and cut up for them. A lot of vegetables that I have like sautéed together or steamed, and then some rice, some pasta. They love orzo. They love red pasta sauce. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like tomato. Do you make your own? I'm assuming make your own kind of tomato sauce. Yeah. Who doesn't? Exactly. That's interesting. All right, so that's cool. And what about? Let's see. What do you have planned for? I'm not going in any particular order here, John, but what do you have planned for? Since we're in the holiday season and people are thinking about that. What kind of stuff are you going to be making? And by the way, I can't help but notice that you do speak a lot about kind of the baked goods. You know what I mean? You've mentioned kind of like moist cupcakes. I know you're big on making cakes and cookies. So what do you have planned for the holiday season? Are you going to be making some things?
Well, we're actually taking our whole family over to Connecticut, and I think we're going to be making like a big family meal. So my mom and I will be making that Bush to Noel together. It'll be really fun.
Nice.
And, we'll do a whole bunch of cookies to share around with our friends, and maybe get the kids involved with a little bit of light mixing.
Okay.
We've done some sifting with them, and it's very messy, but they enjoy it.
Any easy kind of like off the top of your head, any kind of easy recipes that, like when I say easy, John, by the way, my approach is not dissimilar to yours. I'm all about, most taste and the fewest possible ingredients and the least effort. So when I say easy, I mean, I'm wondering if you can advise the listeners here on a potential recipe that's easy enough that they may not even have to actually write down the ingredients. You got anything along those lines? I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but what's kind of an easy holiday thing?
I might do a no spread sugar cookie because those are something that people love because so many amateur or home cooks have tried making sugar cookies and they kind of spread out into a glop.
Oh yeah.
Ever happened to you?
Yeah. Well, I don't bake that much, but go ahead. Yes, I'm familiar with the problem. How do you avoid the spread?
Take your recipe and substitute in a little bit of cornstarch. Everything will come together perfectly. So just take out whatever recipe you're using, maybe a quarter of the flour, and substitute some cornstarch in, and you'll be amazed. I mean, make that an eighth of the flour.
Okay. So if you substitute in for any kind of baked good recipe, a little bit of the flour, like 1/8 for cornstarch instead, you will actually, what you're saying is you'll get a more controlled kind of spread.
Yeah, you'll get like a laser cut cookie. It'll be amazing. Your cookie making horizons will be totally expanded. But if you wanted to do something super simple and you don't have a lot of time on your hands, I would just get some puff pastry,
right? Cut
a little square out of it, score like a 1-inch or 3/4 inch border around it, so like a picture frame now.
Right.
Then you dot it in the center with a fork. You can bake it for just a little bit to start puffing up. Take it out, pour in some nice Gruyere grated cheese, and then top it with asparagus spears or even potato slices, and you'll have an amazing, very impressive, but super fast and easy treat. It's good for the holidays for entertaining.
I like that. So basically, we're making a little kind of bite size. It's almost like an appetizer. Well, it's kind of an appetizer, something that would be good to have with a drink. Using puff pastry, readily available in every supermarket. Bake it out a little bit, and then give it a little hit of cheese, maybe a piece of asparagus or a potato. I know that I'm repeating what you said, but I just want to make sure that I've absorbed it. And that sounds like a lovely little way to go.
Yeah, I'll make an exception for packaged things on puff pastry because I do not have time to laminate all that butter and dough.
No, nobody does.
It's a major undertaking for most people at home.
Hey, what else, by the way, on that subject? Are there any other exceptions? I mean, I know there are for me. But any other things that you buy? I'll tell you the one I'm thinking of, for example.
Yeah.
Like egg roll wrappers or like wonton wrappers. Now, I'm not telling you that I make them a lot, but again, I'm not making
Philadelphia at home.
Exactly. I'm not making exactly for that. Okay. And what about something savory, but more in kind of like the main course thing? Are you what would you roast? I mean, do you make like a ham or a turkey or like a brisket? Like let's talk about like a roast dish or something that's going to take a couple of hours in the oven. What are you thinking?
I mean, how about a nice Christmas duck?
Oh, talk to me. What's your kind of? And by the way, I'm telling you that I'm one of the people that feels that there are certain foods in this country that are completely underappreciated and underutilized. Duck being one of them.
Have you ever had duck bacon?
I didn't even know that duck bacon was a thing.
It is so amazingly good and so difficult to find.
Yeah, well, that's why. I mean, where do you?
Los Angeles, and I search and I can't find it, but occasionally you'll come across it, and it is really like a delicious thick cut of bacon, and I think it's more humanely done as well, to be honest.
It's essentially, I'm going to guess that it's a piece of fat that's coupled with a little bit of kind of the duck meat to it. That when you render it and it gets crisp, it's got to be awesome. It sounds to me almost like what Peking duck would be. I mean, it's one of my favorite things in the world. Well, if you're going to roast some duck, what's the method? What's the process? What are we looking at?
I mean, I'm going to roast it and add a little bit of marmalade to the outside with some seasonings, and
Easy.
then, make an orange sauce to go with it, because I'm a sucker for all the 70s classics, including Canard à l'orange.
Sweet. What's the trick to an orange sauce? What do you, other than fresh squeezed orange juice, what's the kind of agent to thicken it? Is that also kind of a cornstarch situation? Do you use arrowroot? How do you get yourself an orange sauce for your roast duck?
I think you can make a roux, a little bit of a roux for that,
Okay.
and mix that in. And then also, this sounds crazy, but a little ketchup is a nice little mellow finish for that orange sauce, because it takes the bitterness away of the marmalade if you're using it, and the orange peel.
That's interesting. That's one of those trick things that people don't think about.
Right.
That how you can take something as simple, and I find that makes all the difference in cooking, by the way, which maybe comes from experience more than anything else, that there are certain little tiny touches that you can add to any dish that really brings something more to it. All right, so we got some duck. We're going to open up with little of those kind of gougere type things that we were talking about with the asparagus. Love that. And you got plenty of baked goods. Are you a drinking man? Like, what's your adult beverage of choice?
Gosh, if I'm having a cocktail, I would love a properly done old fashioned.
Yeah.
It's like I will ask the bartender and be just a little bit annoying, because I want to know what they're going to do to make it. If they're doing these shortcuts, I'll just skip it and get like a glass of wine or something instead.
What's the? Let's talk about the perfect old fashioned, because I'm with you. I like. Is it a rye or a bourbon for you?
I like a bourbon.
Yeah, me too. How do you make a perfect old fashioned?
I'll take 2 sugar cubes,
Mm-hmm.
and I will soak the ever-living life out of them with some nice bitters. And I like a combination of like a traditional bitter, and I'll use some orange bitters too.
Good.
And then you will muddle it up.
Right.
Add in your bourbon.
Okay.
And I like those Luxardo cherries.
Yeah.
And there's a couple brands that are similar. They're great, but they are such a nice flavor, and they really beat maraschino cherries.
I'm so with you on that I literally have in my refrigerator right now, probably the best. I mean, Luxardo is fancy, but I got like within the last week the cherries that they're selling over at Trader Joe.
Oh, really?
Oh my! I can't even begin. The best cherries that I've ever tasted in my life, in a thick syrup with the stem on them, and they are just perfect for that old fashioned. Love that.
All right, I'm grabbing my car keys when we're done.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. You have to do that.
And then actually, I like to finish off the drink with a flamed orange peel.
Look at you. Okay, so you
really like that little bit of oil in there.
Right. So you have so that people understand, you have a match or a lighter ready to go, and then when you twist the when you twist a little bit of the rind, it flames. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you take like a slice, like maybe like a 1 inch or 1.5 inch thick slice of the orange peel.
The zest,
and then
right?
you're going to warm it up with your lighter to get those oils nice and flowing.
Okay.
And then just under the lighter, you're going to squeeze the orange peel into your drink, and all that oil will ignite and kind of splatter into the drink, and it just gives you a really nice depth of flavor. And it's a cool thing to do while you're having a drink too.
Yeah, sure is actually. Oh, God, I love that. Now I'm excited about a cocktail. Right. Okay. Very good. Let's see. Any other? What else do you want to cover? I mean, I think that we got a sense of how you got to where you were. We have some great recipe and cocktail ideas and dessert ideas. What else should we cover off?
I mean, I would just encourage people to try new things and not be intimidated. You can use YouTube as a resource. There's so many things online and steppable things to just take you through the proper step-by-steps, and you can get it done. Like, people are intimidated by things like choux, for making eclairs and cream puffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond easy. So easy. It's like almost foolproof, and it's really satisfying, and you can do so many delicious things. Like, I have my soft spots, which I can only make these appetizers and cream puffs, I will just literally devour the entire thing, no sharing.
Right.
But you can whip up like a really delicious pastry cream, fill it up. You can make a savory like goat cheese mixture with like goat cheese and some lemon zest and some nice fresh herbs chopped in, some seasonings, and then fill these little puffs up with that, and you have a really great, surprising appetizer. It's like a savory cream puff. So just try new things. Like, don't be intimidated. Like, if you're making cakes and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this frosting is so sweet, try a Swiss buttercream or an Italian meringue buttercream out, or a French buttercream out. There's like so many different variants, and it's kind of fun and meditative to just be in the kitchen, be in the moment, have it be tactile, and experiment and learn more.
Well, I'm with you all the way. I encourage people every week to find some opportunity to make something, and that's what it is that you do and have been doing for a while. So let us remind the folks that they can find John Kanell at the Preppy Kitchen, preppykitchen.com. You can we can watch videos on YouTube. We can see you on the Facebook. We can get Instagram. And yeah, go out and try it. I am looking forward to my next old fashioned. I'll tell you that. And while you might run over to Trader Joe and grab yourself some of these really, oh my, killer cherries, really the best I've ever had. I am going to see if I can locate here in the city that supposedly has everything, some duck bacon.
Yes.
You know who?
We have our homework set out.
Yeah, exactly. We have our homework set up. Well, thank you, John. A pleasure speaking with you. Continued good luck.
Thanks for having me.
And have a lovely holiday season.
Yeah, to you too. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, well, excellent. John Kanell, thank you. PreppyKitchen.com. And, I actually was pushing a couple of buttons here and came across also in the cooking section of the New York Times a recipe for bûche de Noël, which John mentioned, which is the fancy way of saying chocolate Yule log. And I can understand why they changed. Well, it's way more appetizing to say bûche de Noël than it is to say Yule log. Something unappetizing about Yule log. Anyway, I looked at the recipe in the Times, and I thought to myself, okay, there's something that I'll never, ever, ever make. Because not only are there more ingredients than I can count, but it turns out there are 17 steps to make it. And so I'm all for a good bûche de Noël as long as somebody else is making it. Now, that said, I'm back to the New York Times here in holiday season, and I could not help but notice an article written just recently, like within the week, by David Tanis, who writes for the New York Times a column called City Kitchen, and it was entitled "The Filet Mignon of the Sea." Seared sea scallops shine when you prepare them like steak au poivre. So let me just say that this is appealing to me for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that I love steak au poivre. And, I guess the thing to say about steak au poivre is that, au poivre it's a peppercorn sauce. And it's a pretty classic French preparation. And it's quite awesome when it's done well. It's just like there's something like I have to say that I'm a purist in general. When I'm eating steak, I basically am just eating steak. I don't want a sauce. I don't want a bordelaise. I don't want any kind of any other kind of accoutrement. I don't want anything to obliterate it. I am a purist. Yet, here's the exception that I will make: steak au poivre, because it's peppercorns in kind of like a I don't know, peppery brandy cream. Oh my God, it's so fabulous. I had one of the great food experiences in my life last year, 2017. Bistro Paul Bert Bert, doing exactly classic French cuisine like I learned in cooking school. And they had a steak au poivre, and it was as good as any that I've ever had. Oh my God, it was breathtaking. Love that. But David Tanis is writing about seared sea scallops, prepared in the style of steak au poivre. So the other part of the story here is that I actually love sea scallops. Now, here's what all you need to know, and this is a general rule. Get the best ingredients you can. Don't mess them up too much. When I say get the best ingredients you can, when it comes to scallops, you want it to be as fresh as possible. Generally, they're going to be as fresh as possible if and when you purchase them in the fish store, or what they call your fishmonger. If you're lucky enough to get fresh scallops, God bless, go get them. And in this case, David here proposes searing them with kind of a peppercorn sauce, which involves crushing peppercorns. I can't actually access the recipe, can I? Let's see what he does here. Let me just see. Pan-seared scallops. He takes the peppercorns, meaning he uses green peppercorns and black peppercorns, and also pink peppercorns, which aren't really pepper, but that's neither here nor there. He crushes them all up, right? And then you kind of like ground your scallop in them and sear the heck out of them, right? In like a butter, medium high heat. And then he splashes them with like a bit of sherry and a little bit of creme fraiche. That makes this beautiful sauce. You could use brandy, you could use heavy cream to make the sauce, but and then you brighten it up at the end with a little bit of like a citrus zest, maybe a little touch of mint. Man, I would be so happy having that. I've never made the scallops au poivre. But I want them. I want it now because I like scallops and I like au poivre. So that dish has my name written on it. Now, that said, I like scallops. I even have a recipe for them in my book for scallops provençal. In the style of Provence. So what I'm using there is like a tomato and basil and maybe a little bit of garlic and olive oil. And the trick with scallops, like with seafood oftentimes in general, is to cook it just enough and not too much, because it goes from being perfect to being overcooked and rubbery in a short time. Some people, in fact, when it comes to scallops, sear the heck out of them on one side and really only give them like a minute or so on the other. You want it just cooked through, and that's it. But if you're in a market and they have fresh scallops, man, get yourself some scallops. And it does not take a lot of kind of know-how or talent or whatever to also coat them in some peppercorns, sear them in some butter, and then pull them when they're ready, and then finish what you have left in that pan with a little bit of cream and brandy. And oh my God, that is heaven on earth. There was something else I came across too, by the way, also in the New York Times, and this one happened to have been written by the great Gabrielle Hamilton, who owns a restaurant in New York called Prune. She's written books. In many ways, Gabrielle kind of like reminds me of, in a positive way, I'm saying this, of Anthony Bourdain. Well, I only think of him in a positive way, but she reminds me of Anthony Bourdain. She's very, she's a chef. She's New York based. She's very real. She tells it like it is. And she's a gifted, chef. Anyway, she writes an entire article here on, what it's called, "This Sandwich is a Luxurious Holiday Gift for You." And I was attracted to it because I can see from the picture that it's a caviar sandwich, right? So in her caviar sandwich, Gabrielle will use a particular kind of bread. Let's see if I can find what kind. She's using it's the Pepperidge Farm thin bread, right? Pepperidge Farm very thin is preferred, not so sweet like some of the many shelf-stabilized loaves. Excellent structure, stands up to the ingredients, and then all she's doing is buttering the toast. Get the best butter you can, and by the way, that Irish, was it Kerrygold? Very good. Butter your toast, creme fraiche it. Again, buy it in every supermarket, creme fraiche, lovely. And she said, spread the creme fraiche on lavishly. And then basically what it comes down to is getting caviar on that thing. As much, essentially, as you can afford. I will say this, that I worked for many years in the advertising business, and one of the guys I worked for, one of the most memorable, was a guy named Arnold Weinrib at an agency called Wells Rich Green. And Arnold taught me a number of things, one of which was advertising is a business not worthy of adult pursuit. And one of the other things he taught me was had to do with, like, well, we would go out to restaurants, like expensive restaurants on expense account, and he would order like the most expensive bottle of wine on the whole list. I couldn't believe it, but his attitude was that somebody else was picking up the bill. Anyway, he was an Anglophile, Arnold, a Princeton graduate and an Anglophile, whose one of his favorite things in the world was caviar. And the way to have it was not like, just eating it off the spoon. It was not on a little new potato. It was not on a bellini, which is a little, buckwheat pancake. Arnold was happy with a fresh baguette slathered with good butter and then finished with nothing more than caviar. It is really so indulgent, so luxurious that it really only applies, I suppose, at this time of year. So with New Year's coming, my friends, to the extent that it's affordable, get yourself the best caviar you can and drop it on whether it's going to be toast or whether it's going to be baguette, whether it's going to be butter or creme fraiche. That is a delightful treat with vodka, with champagne. Life is good, man. No. Hey, which reminds me, by the way, if you need a $10 holiday gift, I'm going to tell you what's going to be great. It's my book called Short Order Dad: One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free. $10. It's on Amazon, and there's a recipe in there for scallops, and there's even one in there for duck breast, if I'm not mistaken. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is episode number 39 of All You Can Eat. I'll be back with you next Wednesday night for the next one, and until then, I will remind you that life is short, so never waste a meal.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan